It was our first look on a short track. I don't consider Phoenix a short track. On a short track of the short track package. What did you think?
I thought that, like we were just discussing, obviously the racing turned out, like we said, Truex dominant. Eventually, Hamlin ends up just kind of winning it. But it's another one of those races where just throughout the race, hard to pass, hard to really have as much action. And you have certain drivers who do look strong, like a Truex, and like the stronger drivers that Toyotas that you think would look strong, but then it's just hard for them to really dominate, hard for them to really show that. When I think there was a point when Truex was stuck behind a lap car for a significant period during the final stage, and I think that overall, as somebody, and again I'm going to say as somebody new coming into the sport, obviously I don't have that lifelong. I've been watching and understanding races, but since the beginning of last playoffs I have, and so something that I've really noticed about the short tracks in general is that there are certain really good short tracks that I feel like really do have that action racing that Richmond has been going for since it's, really been trying to be on the schedule twice and be a premier short track. But you look at, like, for example, in Bristol, and I felt that, it turned out to be such a great race. And obviously there was a lot going on with the resin and all that. And in the moment, it kind of felt like, wow, what just really happened there? It felt like, and honestly, like as a new person in the sport, I was kind of struggling to understand, was that a great race or was that ridiculous? And I think you really look back and I've been able to realize like how valuable it is to have, and also Bristol as a track is amazing. And to have, just the banking and have, that action that Martinsville also has, but Bristol to have that real stadium feel to it and that produces, really great, unique racing. It feels like Richmond it's almost underwhelming. And that the most interesting thing, you look back at this last week and it was, wow, in the beginning they started on wet weather tires just because it happened to be raining. And it's like, then the race itself, when they were off the wet weather tires, that was just like, nobody can pass anybody, the same leader for a while or then another leader for a while. And it's like, so I think that, I know people have been talking about Richmond and its future as a NASCAR track, and we'll see what happens there. But I think that overall, about the first race on with this new short track pack, definitely a bit to be desired, I would say.
Chris, this is something this conversation we've had for years about Richmond. Richmond used to produce fantastic racing, but it's been years since we saw a really, really good race at Richmond.
It's been 84 years since. First, as far as the short track package, try again. Let's try again. Like, I applaud NASCAR for their work, for their tireless work. Let me say this, right? It's tireless work. But I will say this, and I've said this before on this program, and I've said it to my colleagues, you cannot dissect a new package with 6 cars on the racetrack. You have to put it like a full field in order to understand how the aerodynamics are going to work on a racetrack. Is there improvement? Debatable. Slight improvement, right? Maybe I'll say slight improvement. But we've lost the groove at Richmond, and I think it's a combination of things. I'm wondering if it's part of it is we don't seal the track anymore like we used to, and I think part of it, the cars changed so much, and I feel like it's just not exciting. I don't know if the drivers get into it as much as they used to, too, right? They seem so conservative. Now, I thought the Xfinity race on Saturday was okay, and I thought that their package allows them to make it exciting. I felt like that there was stuff going on throughout that whole race, but the Cup Series left more for me to be desired, and I'm actually concerned about going into Martinsville this weekend, where we know the package was a struggle in 2023, and even with these with these modifications for 2024. I'm not convinced it's going to fix a problem at all for 400 laps on Sunday afternoon at Martinsville Speedway. I hope I'm wrong, and I'll eat my words I'm wrong. But just from talking to other drivers in the industry and talking to colleagues and talking to other industry people, I'm not convinced that we're going to see much of a difference on Sunday at Martinsville.
I'm wondering, and Shane, obviously, as you talked about, you don't have the great history that Chris or I have. Especially me, looking at age. But Richmond, the night races at Richmond especially have not been riveting. And I understand it was Easter night and TV wants it to be a night race, and I get all that. But it seems like the races at Richmond, the day races have been better than the night races. But that being said, as we were talking about earlier, we just haven't had great races, period. I just wonder if it might be a better show in the daytime.
And even last year's spring race, when Kyle Larson ended up winning it, Josh Berry worked through the fields, ended up coming in second, and he was driving the 9 that race before he was obviously in the Cup Series as a regular like he is now. And that race itself, that was one of those, like, there's a leader for a while. Kyle Larson ends up winning it. He's a strong driver. He led for a while. He, won at Martinsville, I think, a couple weeks before or after that one as well last year. It does feel like even those spring races, while, it wasn't necessarily like what we had, this past night race, but yeah, you're right. Like, just to your point that it's not even like the day races have been the strongest short track. And again, it feels like it's a much, much different than a lot of these other short tracks as well, in that it has the straightaway and then having the turns. And then, a track like Phoenix that has that dog leg turn, but obviously is, like you said, a bigger track, doesn't feel at all like a short kind of track. But again, then when you think of the really short tracks like the Martinsvilles and the Bristols, Richmond's trying to bring something a little bit different that's kind of like that, and I feel like it just hasn't really been able to live up to it.
Now, how much longer to keep trying for 2 races a year, though? I mean, I walked out of there just hearing nothing.
Well, look at the stands.
I mean, I understand, and I think Easter may have had something to do with that, right? That's possible, right? But it's also like people just aren't as excited as I remember going to Richmond, right? Just because they not sure what they're going to get. And if you're not sure what you're going to get, would you rather go spend that money sitting in the stands, or would you rather hang out at home and have a pizza party, right? So, I mean, it may be, I hate to say this, and we've heard rumblings of this, Brett, and I know you have too. Like, we've heard rumblings for years that Richmond was going to go down to 1 race, and shockingly, we saw 2 races on the schedule, and I'm fine by that. I thought maybe this year, with having it a night race and with it being cooler, that it might be different. We've seen it be hotter, and but I can't remember the last time I walked out of Richmond Raceway just jazzed and pumped up because it was a great night of racing. I just was left more to be desired, and I know a lot of other people were left too.